This is Can I Laugh on Your Shoulder? To the show. Thank you for being here, friend.
What is up, Molly? I think we have to deal with the fact that you and I could have our own podcast.
I
We
really
really
think
could.
that.
Only because I have a hard stop will this not be 9 hours.
I agree. So for those that are kind of new to my show and haven't been around, so back in I think it was 2022. So it's been 3 years since you've been on the show. You and I recorded. We recorded on Valentine's Day, and your relationship with a certain someone wasn't even public yet. But I remember you told me about it, and I was like, I feel like I have secret insider info. But we just immediately became friends, and you have since become such an encourager to me. I mean, I still can't thank you enough for the endorsement where you wrote for my book. I just love the work that you do. It is such an honor to know you through Al Gore's internet, and and I'm just so grateful. So truly, thank you for being here. And when this comes out tomorrow, we're recording on the day that your book comes out. And so happy book birthday.
Hey, thank you so much. You know because you've written a book and you know what it's like to come out. When you've been sitting on it for a while, you're just finally like, can we just get it out in the world? And so
Oh,
I've
yes.
been talking in kind of generalities about the book and not trying to give spoilers and all of this, but now it's out there. When I tell you, Molly, last night at last night at 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone started blowing up. You would have thought I had dropped an album like Drake or Kendrick. Like people were like, yo, your audiobook is available for download now. Bam, it's preloaded now. And I'm sitting here like, did I just drop an album? Like, what is happening right now? So yeah, there's some excitement around it. It's fun.
Well, it's so funny because even on my Alexa, I don't want to say it too loud for people's machines.
Mine will go off.
I know mine actually just beat back there. It was like, what are you talking about? So even on my you know who, this morning, my kids were getting ready and it was like new release audiobook from Tyler Merritt. And I was like, look at him. He's so fancy with his new release, letting me know in my kitchen. I mean, that is big time stuff. Also, today is another very exciting thing, and this is something I didn't even prepare you for. So, when I have a guest on 2 times, which is becoming, my listeners are like, "Oh, Lord Jesus, Molly." So, this is becoming a little more common, but it is not as common. After 8.5 years, it happens at this point when I have somebody on more than once, but it's still pretty rare. I present you with, like an SNL 5-timer host, I present you with a metaphorical, an imaginary velvet jacket. Tyler, I'm presenting you with this velvet jacket, and it has my face on it, giving you a thumbs up.
I receive it. And because I'm such a huge SNL fan,
I know.
I'm only imagining it like an SNL jacket. You know what I mean? Like I'm visualizing that.
Yeah, you can see it. You can see it in your mind's eye. And it's funny because as I was thinking about this morning, because I always presented to my 201 guests, is that they get the Can I Laugh on Your Shoulder 2-timers jacket. It's velvet, it's whatever color you want it to be, but again, it has my face with 2 thumbs up. And but the people who know SNL or theater and have a little bit of an imagination, I know that in their mind's eye, they're like, this thing is sick.
It
Like
is.
it
It
looks
really
good.
is.
It
Like
looks
I kind of I'm gonna be really honest with you. I kind of feel like you should wait until at least a fourth or something and
this will
then
never happen though.
actually do one. That's how I really feel.
So I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of at the point that I'm like, I think I want to go thrifting and just start finding velvet jackets and then just start amassing these velvet jackets. I just need
Yeah.
a thumbs up from you if you think I should do this.
I'm down. Yeah, I support it fully. Which
Yes.
means I will come back tomorrow just
Yeah,
so I can add on and eventually get to the magic number.
exactly. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we could obviously do bits all day long, but we need to give you to give us the Tyler 10 or excuse me 201. So what has been going on in the last 3 years since we last met here on the show?
Gosh, let me say this. I Take My Coffee Black is my first book. became so much more popular than I could have ever imagined
Mhm.
it becoming. People loved it. They loved the audiobook for I Take My Coffee Black. The response to that was wonderful, which I'll tell you what's great about that is I Take My Coffee. Okay, if you read my new book, it sounds like I'm a well-traveled person, meaning 1 minute I'm talking about theater, next minute I'm talking about football, next minute I'm talking, so I'm all over the map with the things that I talk about. But if you have listened to or read I Take My Coffee Black, you understand where that comes from, right?
100%.
So, gosh, with that, I've done a number of acting projects. I'm walking through the cancer that I still have, and that's a whole nother conversation that is kind of post my new book.
Mhm.
But outside of that, man, I'm just trying to just continue to influence the world in the way that only we can. And gosh, a lot has changed in 3 years,
Yeah.
but we're still here, right?
Yeah, that's amen. Amen. Well, as I told you before we started recording, like I like Drake or Kendrick or I'm a Swiftie, so or Taylor Swift. Like
We
you
are
dropped an
we
album.
are Swifties.
We are Swifties. I know we could do a whole conversation about that. But in my Swiftie world, you dropped an album last night. And so you have been in my ears all day. Like I'm over halfway through your book. And I love, love, love your audiobook. And so this is actually like my plug as your friend to the listeners. Like get Tyler's audiobook both because it's just again you infuse so much of your personality in it and the way that you even have audio of your mom and your Australian Asian doctor, which cracked me up because I could 100% like picture when you were talking about your doctor who's this like 5 foot tall Asian man who has a thick Australian accent and then the fact that you called him in the audiobook and got I mean it's perfect. It's so you. But there is so much, yes, there's humor and I've been chuckling as I was like folding laundry and cleaning kitchen sinks. But I'm telling you, like, there is also so much depth. And so we are going to just like dive in this conversation. And I'm going to ask the hard hitting question. And that is, how did you just get so brave that you just talked about how Coke is so much better than Pepsi? How did you even cross that line that you were willing to alienate all of the Pepsi lovers and be brilliant like me and only love Coke products?
The funny part about that specific thing is it's a joke in a joke
Yeah.
inside a joke. Like it's me talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, then talking about how it's a movie about falling asleep and you shouldn't fall asleep. And you're probably not falling asleep because you were drinking a soda that you shouldn't be drinking, and that soda happens to be Pepsi. And why were you drinking Pepsi? Like it's such a niche dialed in thing. And then when I get to the Pepsi part, I'm like, but since we're here on Pepsi, why are you drinking Pepsi? Like, this makes no sense. It's disgusting. Coke is the best. Because it just is. But what's funny is like I said, the audiobook's only been out for a few hours. And on social media, I've had multiple people just message me and just say, thank you for your stance on Coca-Cola.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
you're doing the Lord's work for the people of God, Tyler. Okay, so obviously, yes. And there's another thing too is just obviously I'm joking about the hard-hitting question there, but you are so like you and I have so much in common and you would not realize how much a 6'2" black man with dreads has in common with a 5'2" white woman who lives on a farm. But we have such similar senses of humor. And I just love when you talk about when you're in these really, really dark moments of getting this horrible diagnosis. You're facing death, like in the face. And the way that you talk about using humor as a bit of a coping mechanism. And it's just all over this book about you, the way you use humor. And obviously, that is a topic that is near and dear to my heart as I wrote an entire memoir about it.
Which can I tell you something that we do similar,
Yeah.
which I did first. So I'm not saying you stole it, but we do this. When you get my hard copy, when you get the hard copy, if you haven't got it yet, you'll see I use footnotes the same way you do.
I know we do. Really similar.
Yeah, yeah. So a handful of my footnotes are actual real footnotes, but 98% of them are all just jokes and inside things and other thoughts that I'm having. And I love that we both do that,
I
which
know.
I so thoroughly enjoyed your book, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. That is really kind. But it adds this brevity, this lightheartedness to this moment of just feeling the weight of what you were feeling. And so that's what I really do want to dive right into. And that is just in this, this book is really kind of everything kind of is undergirded by the story of your diagnosis with cancer and what that walking through that has taught you. And I think it's so beautiful how you talk about what it's taught you about time on earth, fear, what it means to lament, your faith, so many things. And so with that, the reality is that you write kind of about how cancer has reshaped this perspective on time. And I think that for so many people, especially just with everything that is going on in the world, especially, I mean, we're just as we were recording this with the wildfires in LA and just, I mean, just the every day, if you turn on the news, it just feels heavy. So, from what you've learned, what advice would you give to somebody who's really struggling to kind of live presently, like in the moment right now?
Man, so I think it's really easy when you're faced with something that's either life or death, or it really makes you kind of question how much time you have left,
Yeah.
to kind of imagine what you might do. I was talking to my friend Mike recently, and we were talking about how Tim McGraw had that song, I go skydiving, I go,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Rocket Mountain climbing,
climbing, I go 2 point, right.
7 seconds.
On a bull named True Man. Right. Okay. Okay. All right. I think that's the only Tim McGraw song I know. But there's something about the idea of like you are gonna live like you were dying if you find out, that you have so much time or this, that, or the other. But what I've learned is that it's not the big things that change, it's the small things. It's things like, I was telling this story. I was with a friend of mine who was standing in a line, and they started getting really upset that the line was taking so long. And we were on vacation at the time, and I was watching this person get like super upset about being in line so long. And we're standing there kind of in paradise, and I found myself going, I don't feel like I have the time to be angry about standing in line in paradise.
Mm,
Like that's an emotion that I would normally kind of give on a Tuesday that I don't want to give anymore. You know? Instead, I want to stand here and receive this fresh air that I'm breathing in. I want to look at the beautiful people that are standing in the line with me. I want to see if there's an opportunity to spark a conversation that's meaningful with someone while we're just waiting. I want to think about what delicious food I'm going to eat whenever we're out of this line. I'm going to appreciate the fact, and this is big, that I'm still here. There's a thing I think sometimes that we associate with, oh my gosh, how much time do we have left? What's going to happen after I'm gone? And not really taking the moment to go, I'm still here right now. And I'm so radically thankful that that's a thing.
yeah.
And there are your listeners who are listening right now who are just casually like, it's just another day listening to a Molly Stillman podcast and I'm having a good time. I would
Mm,
encourage to say, yo, whether you are sitting in your car, whether you are on a walk listening on your headphones, whether you're listening in your house cleaning, you're still here. There's air in your lungs and you are capable. And as long as we're capable, like, let's go get it, whatever that get is.
yeah. As you were saying that just now, so this is something I've been just kind of wrestling with in the last, I don't even know. And I don't know why. So I'm turning 40 this year. And I think part of me has wrestled with not in like I'm not afraid of turning 40 or anything like that. But I think as I get closer and closer to the age that my mom was when she got sick, that I am legitimately battling some anxiety over like leaving my kids because I know how difficult the death of my mom was on me, and so I have this like fear of leaving my kids without a mom at a young age. And so I often will like play out these scenarios in my head that are not based in reality. They're not based in anything, they have no truth within them. But I think there is something innately within us when we face just sudden loss, sudden grief, a diagnosis. And then I've had so many people around me like lose their moms or get diagnosed with something really scary, or just I think we're regularly reminded of the sanctity of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's something that I've just been like really like wrestling with, and I'm not somebody who tends to battle anxiety a lot. I have in the past and then gone to counseling and like worked through it, and now it's just something about this age, this time of life where I look at my kids and I'm just like, I don't want to leave them behind. Like I can't imagine, or like, and so I love the way that you just so candidly talk about this. Instead of playing out in our head these what ifs, we have got to do the thing of like looking at our life right now and living in
Yeah.
the right now, because there is absolutely nothing I can do about tomorrow. My dad always used to joke, like, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I don't know why getting hit by a bus was like the thing that he always goes to. I just am like, Dad, statistically, like, how many people are hit by buses? Like, I guess it happens, but that's always his go to is like, he's like, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. My dad's 80. And I'm just like, are you walking in front of buses regularly?
Right.
But that's the thing is that, metaphorically, like we get hit by a bus tomorrow, we don't know, but we have to live in the moment, in the present now. And that can feel difficult for people, especially when you're battling these very real feelings. But
Well,
that is, yeah,
let
go
me let me say this. I think that anxiety that you have, especially as you're getting older, is fair,
ahead.
right? And acting as if it's not a real thing, or somebody just being like, oh, just don't think about it. Like, that's not fair. We need to be able, especially as you're getting older, you're hitting a certain decade. We need to be able to leave room to feel the things that come along with getting older and with moving forward. But I would just challenge that any time that you have a moment where you begin to worry about the thing that's not there, challenge yourself to go, okay, if I'm worrying about this thing that I don't know that's going to happen and I can't see that happen, or this bus that is going to come through my front door for some reason, instead, I'm going to pay attention to the child that is in front of me, whether good or bad, whatever this child is doing. I'm going to take a moment and go, okay, but I'm here right now. And here's this other just honest reality. When you are diagnosed with cancer, most people are just going along with their everyday life and they're living their life and they're just walking like normal. And then you go into a room with the doctor, and then that doctor tells you information that forever changes your life from that moment on. You walked in one way and you walk out another. And then after you leave that room, your life is now defined differently. One minute you're here, next minute you're not. Similar to what just happened in our podcast life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that actually also kind of segues to a kind of a similar question that I wanted to ask, and I alluded to this at the beginning, that you and I both use humor as a both a coping mechanism, a defense mechanism, but there's statistics that I could go all into about what laughter does to our bodies, and the healing thing that laughter does. And so there is something actually scientifically positive about using humor in dark scenarios, a little bit macabre,
sure.
if you will. But you just use it in such a beautiful way throughout your book when you're talking about both your cancer diagnosis, but also when you dive into topics on race and loss and so many things. And so I wanted you to just kind of share from your perspective, like, why has humor for you been such a powerful tool in discussing these really heavy topics like race and injustice and cancer and all of those things? Like, what is it for you?
First of all, I'm the worst, man. Like, things are just funny to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, in the midst of the craziest, worst scenario, I tend to just see the humor. And my problem is trying not to say it. You know what I mean? Trying not to say it in the midst of a moment that it shouldn't be said. That's why I'm sure you had class clownness in you too, you know?
I
Like,
literally voted class clown my senior year of high school.
right, right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's something like that we can't help. And if there's a low hanging fruit joke out there, like, we're gonna take it.
It's gonna I always say to my husband, like sometimes like he'll say something and he'll look at me and he'll be like, don't do it, don't do it. And then I'll say the joke that I probably shouldn't have said. And I'll be like, look, the door was open. Okay. It was
Right.
rude for me to not walk through the door and say the joke.
Well, there's a moment in This Changes Everything where I'm sitting in the doctor's office with my Asian Australian doctor, and he's telling me my cancer diagnosis. And I am trying to joke with him. But I have my best friend right there with me, Shannon, and she's literally cutting off my jokes. You know, like I'm like, well, did you hear that? And she's like, no, doctor, we need to see the scan. Oh, and then I'm like, well, did you? And she, you know, and there's kind of two pieces to it. Sure, I always find the humor in things, but I definitely use that humor when I'm afraid,
Mm,
you know? And in the case of my specific cancer diagnosis, the fear kind of crept up on me, you know? Think there's a very specific moment in the book where I realize kind of how serious it is. I meet my secondary doctor, his name's Dr. Barakis, and he's my urologist, you know?
yeah.
And he kind of gives me, you know, he's Scottie Pippen, right? And
Scotty Pippen. Yeah. I was going to
yeah,
say he's the Scotty Pippen to your
to my
Asian,
Michael
I would
Jordan,
say
right?
Asian Michael Jordan. People who
And
are listening are like, what? I'm like, you got to listen to the book to find
just
out
not,
who is
you got to
5 foot
find out.
Asian Australian Michael Jordan.
Right. And the fact that I still to this day know nothing about cricket, but that's neither here nor there. But he was the first, that was the first moment when I talked to him, where he's like, the reason why I'm a part of this surgery is because of this. And the fear kind of fully revealed itself and it pulled all the humor out of me, you know? That's how I can realize that, like, even though it's funny, I'm still kind of using it to kind of to protect a little bit, you know?
Right, right.
But in the case of what I was going through, I think there were definitely moments where I was aware of the fact that I was using humor probably not the best way, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. I think too, one of the things you just said reminded me of how you talk about, and we alluded to it, is the story of how you're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street. And by the way, thank you for bringing that back up for me, as I'm now going to not sleep tonight. But and I just loved you're like, oh well, why did parents in the 90s, the 80s and 90s let us watch this movie? And it's like they didn't. It was that jacked up kid with the VHS tape. Yes.
Right.
For me, it was both Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
sleepovers where a kid busted out those movies and then I was scarred forever. And so, but one of the things that I had never really thought about, and I think because at the moment I was completely scarred by Nightmare on Elm Street, but the way you articulate it, I think is actually really beautiful. How you talk about how, and I can't remember her name, but the character who at the end realizes that Freddy Krueger's powers are based on fear, and how when the character, again, forgive me, can't remember her name, she when she realizes that if she just faces her fear, then Freddy Krueger no longer has the power to kill her in her dreams. Spoiler alert for everyone. The movie's been out for a very long time. So if you haven't seen it at this point,
That's on you. That's on
it's
you.
on you. Okay. But I think there is something so powerful in that, especially as people of faith who, when we're talking about that, there's like an enemy that thrives on our fear and our insecurity. And I think that is such a lesson, and something that you talk about is like when you begin to really like face your fear head on and realize that your fear, that this cancer and the fear of that cancer no longer had power over you. And I think that is a lesson that we can all take to so many areas of our lives. And even me, like I was saying earlier, like as I battle some of these thoughts that go through my head, and everybody listening, like, you've had those moments where you are just terrified of XYZ or whatever this thing is in front of you. And when you realize, when you face that fear, that there is an enemy that is thriving off of that fear,
Yeah.
when you face it, it no longer has power over you. So can you talk a little bit about that, like how that has played out for you, of what that looks like in a kind of a practical sense?
Sure. I think one of the things that all of us are the most afraid of, I think that we have a history of being afraid of, is what we don't know, right?
Yes.
We're afraid of what we can't see or what we don't know or what's around the
Uh-huh.
corner. So oftentimes when some of my closest friends are going through things, or even myself, I ask this question, like, in the midst of the thing that you're afraid of, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen within this scenario, right? So say somebody is, we'll say a work situation, okay? Say you drop the ball at work. I'll ask the question, what is the absolute worst thing that can happen in the midst of this work scenario? Is it so bad that you're going to get a write up, you're going to get a performance improvement program thing?
Yeah.
Are you going to get fired?
Yeah.
And let's imagine that getting fired is the worst thing that could happen to you. If you were to get fired, then what? Like, do you have a support system around you that's going to be able to land on your feet? Have you thought about updating your resume? If you land into another job that's, pays the same or this, that, or the other, would that be the worst thing? And so as soon as you start to like rationally begin to go, okay,
Yeah.
what is the worst thing in this scenario? And when it comes to cancer, sadly, the absolute worst thing that could happen is that you lose your life.
Right.
And when I was younger and really kind of new in my faith, the whole idea is to live as Christ, to die as gain,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
it was easy to say. If I'm being honest, it was like,
Yeah.
if I die, there's heaven. But as you get older and you live a little bit more life, I love life. I love this earth. I love the people that are on this earth. I don't have kids, but I have my niece Zoe, which people will read about as they go farther into my book. I have a whole moment on the audiobook where I absolutely lose it talking about Zoe, my niece. I want to see her go to her first prom. I want to find out who she becomes. So when I think about like what's the worst thing that can happen, it makes me emotional even thinking about it. When I think about what's the worst thing that can happen when it comes to losing your life, I think about all the people and the things that I would lose in the midst of that. But then I think about this. If tomorrow, God forbid, I was no longer here, did I love well while I was here? Did I serve well up until the very last moment? And I'm not trying to be all over spiritual by saying, like, did I serve the Lord well? I'm talking a tangible,
Yeah.
like, did I make you feel seen, Molly?
Yeah.
Was I a soft place to land for you? And if I'm able to begin to answer those questions, right? If I'm beginning to be able to go, okay, let me take action of those things while I'm here. That's my way of looking fear in the face, right? And going, there are some things I can't change. But while I'm here and I have the tangible moments to do these things now, I can bring as much goodness as I can into the moments that I currently exist in. And that can be my stronghold on the fear that I might see coming against me on a life that could be short-lived, you know?
That is so powerful, Tyler. I really love that. And I think it's such a good, like I said, it's such a good reminder for all of us, as we've all faced those feelings, those fears in different ways. And if we haven't even personally walked through it, like we've walked through it with somebody. If you live long enough, like you're gonna walk through suffering, you're gonna walk through pain, you're gonna walk through hard times, especially with those that you love. And that is just a really beautiful reminder, and also kind of a funny reminder on a side note, because this is what I do. Do you ever watch This Is Us? Were you a This Is Us fan?
Of course.
Oh, yes. So it's basically like Randall and Beth Pearson, Sterling K. Brown. Love him, but they always played that game, worst case scenario, with Randall. And he would always have to say all the things that were like in the worst case scenario. But it's funny because my husband and I have then taken that to, because my husband's like, John's he's just Like he's with it. He's very methodical. He's just like not, he doesn't, his mind does not spiral out like mine. He doesn't. And so he helps to bring me down to earth. And so he kind of pulls the Beth. He is the Beth to my, I am Randall. He is Beth.
Right.
Like, okay, what is the worst thing that could happen right now? Like, let's play it out. And I then will like spit out all of the worst case scenarios and he'll look at me and he'll go, wow, okay, that was a whole
Okay.
lot, that got way worse than I really have, because it always ends up to be like, and then I will be publicly humiliated for all of eternity. And anyway, but no, I think on a deep, deep level, I really think that that's really beautiful to, again, remind us of our humanity and the moment that we're living in now. And again, I think that this then even segues to another thing I wanted to ask you about. And that's, I think you talk about this. It's like I was sobbing while listening to this part, and you were talking about how we just as a culture in general have done a very poor job of learning how to lament. And that it's that, very churchy biblical word of grief, of deep grief, and what it looks like to lament well. And you tell the story of Emmett Till's mom, and that is just your telling of it is just gut-wrenching and beautiful and hard, but also again a beautiful picture of grace and mercy and lamenting. And so what for you has lamenting well taught you about processing your own grief and pain, and then even helping those, your friends and your family in your life process their grief and pain?
I've learned that I do a really crappy job of taking in like the goodness of moments in my life, you know? Like I'll give an example. There are thousands of people right now that are trying to find a literary agent to put together a book to come out to hopefully one day be a published author all over. I'm sure there are people listening right now that are going, this is all nice, but can we talk about how you become an author?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and here we are, both having published books out. In my now third book, and it's out in the world, and people are listening to it, and it's people can buy it from stores and all this. And I am gonna have to get forced today, probably by Jen and all my friends, to just stop and go, can you just enjoy this moment for a second?
Yeah.
Can you just stop and enjoy the moment?
Yeah.
Like look around and look at your life. Can you just stop for a minute, bro? And until somebody does that with me, I probably won't. That's a trait of mine that sucks. I can afford to not have that trait. The trait that I can't afford is to not stop to lament, to really take in what's going on and to be able to look at the hurting, the bad things directly face to face and really look those things in the eye. And I've had to learn how to do that, but too many times in our lives do crappy things happen to us. And I'm talking really, 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 really crappy things. And what we choose to do is watch that funny movie or try to sleep it off or, medicate or drink or do whatever we need to do versus actually stopping and sitting in the hurt of that scenario.
Yeah.
But once we're able to do that, it not only is able to shape and strengthen us, it also is a favor. It's a gift to the people around us once we're able to do that on our own, right? Because when we aren't able to lament and we don't lament well, we begin to have offshoots of really crappy things to the people that are around us. You know the idea, you've been married, so I'm sure you're married, so I'm sure this has happened before,
Yeah.
where you'll go off on your husband or maybe vice versa, and then you guys both realize it has nothing to do with them, right? It's like, I'm sorry. That's not even, I don't know why this has nothing to do with you. It's because we have this inability to be able to stop and go, okay, what is this thing that's killing me? Have I really looked at it? Have I taken the moment to sit in the heaviness of it, let it affect me, and then begin to walk my way out? And I think that's something that we have to do as people. And we're horrible at it. Black people are incredibly horrible at it. And oftentimes therapy helps with that. But I think we just all need to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, Tyler, we're running out of time and I don't want to be running out of time, but we are. But there is one more question that I really wanted to ask you. And I think that this really dives deep into what we've been talking about. And just, writers, we don't just, sometimes we do, but most of the time we don't write to just for it to sit in a void. We write for a reason, for a purpose. And, I take my coffee black and then your incredible children's book and now this book. Um, like you're putting these things in, you're out, you're so vulnerable, you're so raw, and you're telling your story in a way to hopefully impact other people, and it does. And so my question for you is, what specific impact do you hope that this story, this book, this changes everything, the legacy, what do you hope it leaves for this generation and even future generations?
So I'm going to answer this in a twofold question. Okay. So there's one piece of me that just hopes that this is one of those books where people listen to it and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you have to listen to this." You say, you tell somebody else. You're like,
Yeah.
"Dude," or you start telling people stories out of the things that I say and go, "You have to listen or watch or read this or whatever." Right? Then there's another piece though that there are people that are like you, where I'm a musical theater person. I love sport. I'm so widely like all over the world.
Same.
And I know that there are other people that are out there that get my little jokes
Yeah.
about little things that when I say 525,600
5,600
minutes, they
minutes.
don't, right? They don't like it's automatic to you. You know what I mean? There are people in my world that will fight as strong as I will, that are still angry that they cast Russell Crowe as Javert in Les Mis. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like this book is full of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so with those little things, you're able to find yourself in somebody else's book,
Mhm.
right? But because I also talk about the deep things like cancer and how do we get out of that and how do we find faith in where we are and how do we live in the moment the best that we can and all of these kind of enriching things amongst all this humor, I just hope it all just lands evenly with somebody so that when they close the book, they exhale, it's like, yes, I can take this into my soul because I feel it. If I take my coffee black was like my stepping stone into this is who I am, and I hope you can take some stories. This changes everything is my way of saying, hey, take my hand and let's walk together, And hopefully we can walk together in such a way that it really does impact and change the world. I talk very specifically about legacy towards the end of this book. And I joke about how there was a period of time where I think I wanted like my name on a building when I'm gone or something. But now I just so badly, Molly, when I'm gone, I want you even to be able to say, I know when I spent time with Tyler, whenever I talked to him, God, I remember how he made me feel. And if I can make other people feel the way that Tyler made me feel, then we'll be okay.
Amen. Well, Tyler, this is so good. This has been just such a joy, such an honor. And side note, I'm very bad at math and I don't ever know like number question answers. But I remember one time my son, who is 8, he was asking my husband, who is very good at math, how many minutes are in a year? And I took no time, Tyler. And I was like, 525,600. And my husband looked at me and was like, how do you know that? And I was
Wow.
like,
Right.
excuse me, I watch Rent. Okay, thank you so
Right. 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 Right.
so
It's also amazing. It's also amazing how much all of us now know about Alexander Hamilton.
yes. Okay. Okay. Real side note. I gave my daughter tickets to go see Hamilton for Christmas, and we went the day after Christmas. She's 11, and she was like crying at the dun 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 dun, dun, banana.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, she just immediately started crying. She loved it so much. And she is officially like, she has a shirt that has the work, work. Like, she loves the Schuyler sisters so much. So, anyway, I just thought you would really appreciate that how
I
much
love it.
she knows about Alexander Hamilton now. Oh my God,
Fantastic.
Tyler, I love you so much. You're just so wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. And congratulations again on this book. Everybody go get it. I will have Tyler's info in the show notes. Thanks for being here, friend.
Fantastic. I love you, Molly. Take care. Please tell all your people I